The stage is all yours, Michael.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all the CLS pre-CLS club officers. I think everyone's doing a great job, and thank you for arranging this, and thank you for having me. With that, I will start my sharing is not turned on. Could you allow me to share the screen, please? Okay. So I put together a small presentation, and here we go. You are screen sharing. Good. Slideshow, play from start. Okay, does it look okay to everyone? Like it's supposed to look?
Yes, it looks great on my screen.
Okay, thank you. I have two screens, so sometimes things don't do what I want them to do. All right, everyone. Today, and as we know, my name is Michael Bowling, but today we will be presenting, or I will be presenting an introduction to the CLS career path at SJSU. So the outline for today is as follows. We will start with a brief overview of the CLS profession, followed by a bit about me. And next, we'll have a brief overview of the SJSU CLS program, followed by tips for applying, which might be everyone's favorite part of this. And then afterwards, I'll be happy to take any questions that anyone has. Now, starting out, we'll go over a brief overview of the CLS profession. So the primary role of a CLS is to perform laboratory testing to provide accurate, timely laboratory test results. So if you've ever had your blood drawn when visiting a hospital or a clinic, chances are that your blood was analyzed by a CLS. The CLS profession pays well and there's lots of options. So in the Bay Area, CLSs this is starting at about $60 an hour. And there are statewide shortages of CLSs. So if you live in a rural area, this issue is particularly acute. There are many hospital shifts and schedules to choose from. So depending on your preference, you might find yourself working day, evening, or night shift. I found out that I really prefer evening shift. So the primary disciplines of the CLS profession are hematology, chemistry, microbiology, immunology, blood banking, and urinalysis. So depending depending on where your career path takes you, you may be working in a lab that concentrates on just one of these disciplines, or a particular area of the lab that just concentrates on this, or you may be doing a little bit of everything, as is the case with people who are pure generalists. So other details of the CLS profession are as follows. So it combines interesting science and patient care. So in other words, the more you learn, the better patient care you will provide. And there's a great work-life balance. So when you work as a CLS, you usually finish all of your work in that same day. So you don't have anything to worry about as far as like continuing on a project that's ongoing. And also, you don't have to be a slave to your email. So when you go home, you don't have to worry about checking that email. And then one thing that is, I think, unappreciated is that CLSs get to wear very comfortable uniforms. So if you become a CLS, you get to wear your favorite walking shoes every day and very comfy scrubs. And now a bit about me. So why I like being a CLS is that I get to help people, and that's very meaningful for me, and it gives me a great job satisfaction knowing that I help to improve people's lives. And I enjoy using my hands. So I get to do things like pipette or troubleshoot instruments or adjust my microscope instead of staring at a computer all day. And I love looking at cells under the microscope. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you see a bunch of cells there. The larger cells are white blood cells. The smaller reddish cells are red blood cells. And you also notice that they're anucleated. And then there's also some platelets in that picture. And now some fun facts about me. My favorite animal is a frog. So I've had a lot of different pet frogs in my lifetime. And one of the particularly interesting types of frogs I had was what you can see there on the lower left-hand corner. It's an Argentine horned frog, and those frogs are capable of eating small fish and rodents. I love to ride my bicycle every day, so I ride my bike to work, and I'm currently riding a road bike with straight handlebars. And the last fun fact is that I taught clinical science in Vietnam and Ukraine. So in Vietnam, I got to teach hematology, and that was about a month, and it was really fun. And I also had the opportunity to ride a motorcycle from the north to the south. And then Ukraine, I got to teach QA and also it's quality assurance and phlebotomy. And when I was there, some of the locals showed me something they like to do, and it's called rope jumping. And that was really fun. And now for an overview of the SJSU CLS training program. There are two main goals for our graduates. The first is that we prepare our students to get the Medical Laboratory Scientist certificate. This certificate is offered by the American Society for Clinical Pathology, and this certificate is recognized all over the country. So if you decide to work outside of California, this will be very helpful for you. And then we also prepare our students to obtain a clinical laboratory scientist license, CLS license. This is provided by the California Department of Public Health Laboratory Field Services, and it allows you to perform high complexity testing in any hospital laboratory in California. The SJSU CLS training program currently has 30 affiliated hospitals, and we have a hospital as far north as Wairika. It's right up there on the Oregon border. And we have a hospital as far south as Long Beach. I would also like to note that we have a significant number of hospitals in the Bay Area. It just gets a little jumbled in this picture there, so you can't necessarily see that so well. So the training year is as follows. We take 30 students in spring and 30 students in fall. Mondays are for SJSU directed learning online, including quizzes, lectures, and other learning activities. And then Tuesday through Fridays are for hospital-based training in person at your assigned hospital. All right, so here's probably the most exciting part of the presentation for a lot of you, and this is tips for applying. So I've broken down the tips into 5 categories, and they are shown here. The first category is coursework and grades. So although it's important to get good grades in all of your classes, it's particularly important to get good grades in these classes here. We would like to see you get A's in these classes. If not A's, then B's. Again, as a reminder, it's a very competitive program. And we do want to see you taking the labs with these courses as much as possible, because if you take these classes and get great grades and also take the labs with them, you're going to get a higher application score. The next category is letters of recommendation. So you want to choose people that are familiar with you. So you probably don't want to choose that teacher for your online class where there was 150 people and they probably didn't know you that well. You want to choose people that are willing to put effort into the letter of recommendation. So if you have a recommender, please tell them that it's going to be very beneficial to you to put more than just a few words and check a few boxes. And if they are feeling particularly motivated, they also have the option of attaching a formal letter of recommendation to our SJSU letter of recommendation form. So remember that. Bosses and teachers provide your best letters of recommendation. Coworkers, friends are not ideal. The next category is work experience, and we get a lot of questions about this. So you will get the most points for paid clinical lab work. Other paid lab work and other relevant paid work experience also will get you points and is good, but these need to be evaluated on a case-by-case situation based on their relevance to the CLS field. So this might include people who have worked in like a GMP lab for, say, food or pharmaceuticals, or someone who taught biology in college, or someone who works in a water quality testing lab, things like this. We need to kind of review each of those on a case-by-case situation. Your personal statement. We want to see that people follow the instructions. So, I mean, this is pretty obvious, but there's a reason why we say submit it as a PDF or make it double spaced. You want to make sure you answer the prompt. So if we read a personal statement and the person forgot to tell us about their career goals after completion of the program, that tells us they didn't follow instructions, or maybe they just used the same personal statement for a number of applications to different programs. And they didn't want to take the time to make one that was unique for SJSU. So you want to avoid typos. This is straightforward. So triple check for typos. And then lastly, you want to consider your audience. For example, a hospital ed coordinator, may be reading your personal statement, and the goal of these hospital ed coordinators is to hire you after they train you. So keep that in mind. And the last category for the tips is an overall professional application. So we want to see, did the applicant follow all instructions? Did the applicant submit all documents on time? Otherwise, they will get an incomplete score for their application. And then we want to see a mature professional resume that is accurate, shows clear timelines, reflects effort, and is similar to an application for an important job. So if you'd like to learn more about the profession, I've listed a number of societies here, a number of organizations. On a different presentation I had that didn't save, I had spelled these out, but I will tell you that my first favorite here is ASCP, the American Society for Clinical Pathology. They've provided me a lot of opportunities. I'm really grateful for all they've allowed me to do. And then my second favorite here is the SJSU Pre-CLS Club. So thank you, everyone. And now I can take some questions. And if anyone has any questions, say after today, they are welcome to email us at cls-group@sjsu.edu, and myself or my staff will be happy to answer your questions. Stop this share if my cursor will pop up.
Thank you, Michael. That was a
Welcome.
great presentation. And it looks like we already have a question in the chat for you.
Okay.
It reads, what are the most common mistake applicants make, either with the application or with their statements?
They don't answer the prompt. People will decide that this is an opportunity to talk about all the things under the sun, but we have very specific instructions for a reason. So you really do want to answer the prompt to the T. And when you get done writing your personal statement, go through it again and just make sure you're staying on point there. Another thing that people will do is concentrate more on hardships than strengths. And it's up to you to balance that, but we want to know which, your strengths are. Alrighty, so there are other questions? Okay, I don't see any.
We had another question in the chat, and they asked, how important is relevant work experience to the CLS application? Is any work experience better than no experience?
Absolutely. So yeah, if you have a job, if you've had a job before, that does count for something compared to someone who's never had a job. But if you have paid clinical work experience, you will get the highest score. And then everything in between is scored on a case-by-case situation.
I personally have a follow-up on this. Like, what like encapsulates clinical work? Like, could you give us some examples of what the reviewers are looking for?
So if you've worked in a hospital, or a biotech laboratory that reports patient results, then that would be considered clinical lab work. So if I was an undergrad and I've never had a job before, I was looking for a lab assistant job, paid clinical lab work. Personally, I would go to different organizations like Kaiser, Sutter, Stanford, UCSF, the bigger hospitals, and put my resume in there and get a profile set up. And that way I would be ready to apply for lab assistant jobs when they came up. And I would also look at maybe biotech companies. And any follow-up questions to anything I say are welcome as well.
We also had a Google form prior to the meeting that members could submit their questions to. I think Alyssa will start asking from those.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the questions was, how many years of experience would make applicants be more competitive or
The
stand?
the more the better. So if you've had 3 months in a lab, in a clinical lab, you will receive less points than someone who's been in a clinical lab for 5 years. So with that, I'd also like to say that it's important that we can see your years of experience on your resume. It sounds odd, but sometimes people will list just the year for their jobs, and that makes it a little difficult. So if I see lab assistant at such and such hospital for, and all it says is 2021, that's not very informative to us.
And we actually had another question. It says, my question is related to the program requirements. Do we have to take lab along with these courses, hematology, immunology, and medical microbiology? If it does not require, will it reduce our chance to get into the program?
You will receive a higher score if you take those labs. And every application, like every cohort, it's a different level of competitiveness. So say in fall, we get 200 applications, and then in spring, we get 120 applications. That means that the one with more applications is probably going to be a little bit more competitive. So it really depends how competitive your application is with the entire group. So if you take the labs, you will receive a higher score, but it's up to you to decide whether you want to take the chance of applying without them.
Okay, thank you. And then we actually had another question about the admission requirement. And they asked, does this course accept international students as it's mentioned on the requirement, legal right to work in the US? Can international students use CPT or OPT so they can get approval for the program?
That would be a
Or do you not know much?
that would be a question for graduate studies, since they
Okay.
handle admissions. Yeah, and there's so many small details about that I don't want to answer incorrectly, but we welcome everyone, please. We'd love to have
Okay.
you join our program.
Yeah, for sure. And then they asked someone asked, I know that each CLS program has different letter of recommendation forms. If I wanted to apply to more than one school, do you have any advice that you can give them on how to approach their professor or supervisor to fill out more than one recommendation form?
Hmm. I can really only speak to San Jose State.
Yeah.
So you have a good relation with that person. I think they'll be more willing to write multiple letters. So really, I would suggest that when you're in a course, keep in mind that you may want to consider using that person for a letter of rec and start communicating early, and they'll probably be more willing to help you, such as writing a longer letter of rec or sending the rec to multiple schools.
Thank you. And then another person asked, are applicants local to San Jose preferred over applicants from, per se, like Southern California or out of state?
No, we look at all of them equally.
Okay. And then what would you say are some common weak points in applications or strong points?
Oh, professionalism, just overall professionalism. If I see a personal statement that has LOL and a smiley face at the end of it, probably not the best. and I would
Mm.
consider that slightly unprofessional. So you really want to come off very professional, and that ties into where I was saying how education coordinators who want to train you and likely hire you afterwards, they're going to be seeing patient likely. So keep that in mind.
Okay. And then, what are some challenges associated with being a CLS trainee? What was your own experience back then when you were a trainee for a
Okay,
CLS?
this is a great question. It is a healthy work-life balance. So when I was in the program, I studied way too much. I probably could have studied, I don't know, half as much, but I was studying every single second and I really burnt myself out that way. And I feel like I could have enjoyed the training year a little bit more if I balanced my time better and just did a little bit every day and took a break when I was tired. So,
Yeah, I think that's definitely what we're all learning to do, navigating college is just trying to find a good balance between like academic, but also like your social life to make sure you don't burn out. Because I've definitely done that a couple semesters before.
okay,
And
I can
we
relate.
had another question. What led you to the field of clinical laboratory science? How did your interests develop?
Okay, well, I went to UC Santa Cruz and I graduated with a bachelor's in biology. And then I went out and tried to find a job, and it was tough. Um, yeah, it was really tough. So I was going to job fairs, and I went to a particular job fair, and I met someone named Joseph Musalam there from UCSF. And at the time, they had a training program, and he said, "Oh, hey, well, I know you're looking for a job, but maybe you should check out this training program." And I thought to myself, "Oh my God, I just got out of school. I really want to get a job." But then I started looking into the details of it and I took the brochure home and talked with my family and I decided that CLS was the career for me and I called him the next day and next thing you know, I was applying for a lab assistant job at UCSF and I was really excited to get a job in an adult stem cell lab and that's how it started and the rest is history.
Well, that's awesome.
Thanks.
But we actually did have like a couple like questions in like the chat too. Sorry, I just like missed them. But
That's okay.
someone asked, is online learning in CLS more challenging compared to in-person classes? How will you describe the didactic portion at SJSU?
Okay, so that depends on your learning style. Um, some people some people have different preferences. But our online learning style or model allows us to have hospitals all over California, and it's really convenient in that way. And then I'm sorry, what was the second half of the question?
Um, I think they just said, how would you describe like
Oh, okay.
online, like the curriculum portion at like SJSU?
Okay, so it'd work like this. You wake up in the morning and you can be in your pajamas still, and you grab your laptop and open it up, and you're ready to go for 8 hours of learning on every single Monday.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And then another person asks, considering the current job market and difficulty getting jobs, would volunteering and research lab experience make up for paid clinical lab experience? Also, what is an appropriate amount of letter of recommendations to have?
For the appropriate amount of letter recommendations, I would refer to the instructions on our website, and it's three.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then, I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Um, they said, would volunteering and research lab experience make up for paid clinical lab experience, clinical experience?
You will receive the most credit and the highest score for paid clinical lab work. Anything that isn't paid clinical lab work, we evaluate on a case-by-case situation. So unpaid research will have to be evaluated by each application reviewer, and each application reviewer may see it slightly differently, but I can't emphasize it enough. Paid clinical lab work is going to really help you knock it out of the park in that category.
Okay. And then someone else asked, will you discourage students taking classes from online extension schools like UCB or UCSD?
Absolutely not. So for your courses, you can take them online or in person. And but for labs, we do prefer in person. You still get credit if it's an online lab, but We like in person better for, I think, reasons that I hope are obvious.
Sorry to interrupt, but it looks like Sal has his hand raised for a bit if he would like to ask his question.
Sure, yeah, I'll hop in. First of all, nice to see you again, Michael. Same goes to you, Jenny. So you talked a little bit about burnout as training in a CLS. So I was hoping you could kind of expand because a lot of the discourse I've seen online is about how actual clinical lab scientists post-training are extremely burnt out. And I was hoping that you could talk about like some of the ways to manage burnout while working as a CLS apart from training.
Okay, so I've heard of burnout more so from nurses, but there's two things that you can do. One is, again, manage your work-life balance. So when you go to work and you get done with work, don't think about work. Um, and the second thing that you can do is if you work at a place that's particularly busy and you're not happy with your job, you should start looking for another job because not every single lab is going to be high volume, fast-paced, ultra stressed, stress laden.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question.
And then we have a few more questions in the chat. Someone asks, if our application gets rejected, what should our next steps be? How can we improve our odds for the next cohort?
Your next step should be that you should give it about a month because we're really busy around that time when the offer letters and the rejection letters go out. And after about a month, just email CLS-group and politely ask how you may be able to improve. And usually our team is willing to give advice on that. But I will just make a general point that say you apply and then you don't get into the SJSU program, you do want to make improvements, whatever that may be in your application. And then when you apply again, I would suggest that you mention it or draw attention to it so people can see that, hey, I didn't get in, but I'm really committed to this field and I'm still working to improve. And yeah, this is the type of student and trainee I would that I am or hope to be.
And I'd like to follow up question on that. Is there a certain max amount of times we can apply to the SJSU CLS program? Because I think for like nursing, they only allow you to apply like maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yes, you have a maximum. You can apply 3 times. And then if for some reason you've made significant improvements, you can email us and potentially ask for an exception. But those are only granted if people, again, have made significant improvements. One thing that our associate director always says, and which is very true, is that if you apply once, you make no improvements, and then you apply again, like, can't be particularly shocked if you don't get in. I mean, again, each cohort has a different level of competitiveness, but take the time and make the effort to improve if you're going to apply again. And I also want to say, if you don't get in the first time, please do not be discouraged. Some of our best students, some of our smartest students don't get in the first time. So
Thank you. And we actually have like a couple more questions. So someone asks, will someone apply for both SJSU and SFSU have a better edge to get in?
well, if you apply to 2 programs, your chances to getting accepted to one of them,
Yeah.
I would say definitely. We when I applied for the CLS program, I applied for SGSU and SFSU. So we don't hold that against anyone. We think it's great. We think it's wise. Um, so yeah, so on the flip side of it is if we see that you applied to both, we don't see it as a bad thing.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, but
And
I will make one note of that. This is be very careful is that if you do apply to both, if you write your personal statement and it says, I can't wait to get into the SFSU training program, it happens. So avoid that. Okay. That's all.
okay, thank you. And
Welcome.
then they also asked, how can we prove that our paid like that they did paid lab experience? Do we have to put our pay stubs, or will they have to provide details on the application?
We audit them. So if you want to lie. Keep in mind that we could audit it and there's going to be consequences if it's false.
Okay,
And if
sounds
I didn't
good.
answer that,
Thank you. Any more questions, or you guys are more than welcome to type in the chat or turn on your mics too.
I have a question. It's kind of like SJSU curriculum centered, but for the microbiology class, is it sufficient for me to just take the Micro 101, or would there be another follow-up class that I would have to take in order to fulfill the requirement?
I'm pretty sure I sent it to you and others, so I'm not to put you on the spot. I would have to look I would have to look at the course numbers and let you know, but I believe you do have to take more than just 101. But we can talk about that more, and if there was something that I missed or overlooked, we can modify that.
Mm, for sure.
Oh, and if anyone has any questions that they're maybe shy to ask, and they want to do it anonymously, you can maybe send the question to Jenny and she can read it off, or Alyssa or whoever.
I actually had a question. So I'm about to graduate next semester and I'm planning on applying for the CLS program here.
Uh-huh.
But I know how you had on the slides that you recommend taking physiology and genetics. How much would you recommend us to take that? Like, do you think that's like very important, or do you think that's like just like another course that would be like a good upper hand to have knowledge in?
I no, I think this is a great and fair question. So I presented that one slide and I did mention these two courses. And it comes back to the idea of just you'll get a higher score if you take them. As
Yeah.
far as like when we look at an overall application, you will receive higher score for those classes mentioned than say general chemistry or OChem or something like that. So those ones stand out. And if you're able to take those, that's great. If you're able to take the labs, that's great too. I know when I applied, like I didn't take a quantitative analysis lab, but I did take the med micro lab. So, you do what you can and hope for the best and hope you're going to be competitive. And if you don't get in, then you give it another shot.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we actually had a couple more questions. So someone asked, could we submit a pending CLS training license while applying?
No. So you need to have that came up, I think, last year. But now we have a really firm rule where you have to have your training license. And that's for two reasons. One is that we had someone, I guess I hate to say it, but fake it. And we actually didn't, it took a long time for us to figure that out. I don't know why they did it, but we weren't able to give a training position that time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
And
the other reason is because if we have, I'm sorry, just real quick, if we have tons of training licenses pending, it's so much work for my staff, and there's
yeah,
only so as the program director, I had to make that judgment call for the well-being of my staff as well. And sorry to interrupt.
oh no, no worries. Thank you so much for answering it. And then we actually had another question. They asked, what class satisfies medical microbiology?
Like just in general?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's our pathogenic micro, but I'm not exactly sure if that's what satisfies medical microbiology. I
See,
think I'm just asking like what class would
and
that
that's a fair question. So I'd ask everyone to put themselves in my shoes. So we have applicants from everywhere, and there's many different names for these courses. So what we tell applicants is that if you are curious about that, if it will satisfy a particular requirement, you need to email LFS. So if you go to the applying for a CLS license homepage for California Department of Public Health Laboratory Field Services. At the bottom of their webpage, it has their contact information. Shoot them a quick email, say, here's the class, here's the course description at this place. Will this satisfy such and such a requirement? And they will reply very quickly.
Okay, thank you. And then we have like a couple more questions. So we're I was wondering, like, are there other opportunities for career growth within the medical laboratory or
Oh, absolutely. That is the best question because more than ever, CLSs are moving up into different positions in hospital labs. So I remember when I was early on in my career, I had my goals set on ed coordinator or specialist. So say you just start out working as a bench tech in the CLS lab. I mean, excuse me, as a CLS in a hospital lab, you can do education coordinator, specialist, supervisor. You can even be an administrative director. You could be a manager. A lot of CLSs are going into LIS now within the clinical lab, within the hospital, which is great because what a lot of labs are seeing is that if you have someone who's great at LIS, but they don't work as a CLS or maybe something missing there and it disconnects. So oftentimes people will train people in the lab who are CLSs to move into that area, which is pretty exciting and new. So
Great, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
And then another question would be, um, for the students who are considering moving into quality and management roles within the clinical lab, what is your best advice that you can give them?
I would say communication. You want to communicate with your supervisors and your management early on and let them know what your goals are. And so that way you'll be on the radar. And then when opportunities within the lab come up, you want to take advantage of opportunities for growth, such as um, a safety officer that relates to quality assurance or instrument validation. That is something you really want to be involved in. Um, and just generally taking on any extra duties that you can, reagent management, inventory management, being pulled off the bench to help out your supervisor, that's always a great thing. In my opinion, if that's, where you're where you want to take your career path. So
Thank you. And then we actually have another like question in the chat. Someone asked, "Do you think moving to Northern California is beneficial to get into the program? Will the hospital give preferences?"
I can't speak for our ed coordinators, but I will say that our ed coordinators want to hire you after they train you. So if you're planning to stay local, they probably like that. If you're going to train and then leave afterwards, they're probably not going to be so thrilled about that. But that's not always the case. Some people just train just for the sake of having more CLSs go into the field. But I will tell you that the most training sites and education coordinators want to hire you afterwards, and that's because they're spending at least $100,000 to train you. So whether or not you want to move beforehand and then apply, I can't really say. That's
I kind of had a follow-up question backtracking to the quality assurance. I believe that's what you're doing right now. So if you could give us a little bit of what got you started on working in that area of CLS and maybe share your experience on how it was like teaching to students in Vietnam about this line of work.
okay. So what I did to move into a different career path other than being a bench tech was after about 3 or 4 years of working the bench, I thought, hey, I want to do something more, try and just be really good at what I do or be the best at what I do. So I started studying for the specialist in hematology certification through ASCP. And as I was studying for that, I also applied to give webinars. through ASCP. So those two things were kind of how I started going into, again, my particular pathway was education and specializing in hematology. And by being involved with ASCP, I felt like I didn't really have to wait for openings in my lab. I could still be working on something that would benefit my skills and my resume. So it was really cool because after I gave webinars, then I started giving workshops. And then eventually I was invited to be part of their ASCP exam committee. So I got to write questions for the ASCP exam. And then eventually I moved up to vice chair and then chair of the committee. And then from there, the opportunities to do global outreach popped up. And it was such a cool opportunity they offered me that I decided to quit my job and head to Vietnam. And it was something really special for me there, and wonderful experience teaching people every day, just doctors and nurses there, and teaching them how to improve their hematology labs. And I actually got to go to some of their labs, and wonderful experience. So if you are just starting on your career, I would suggest checking out the opportunities there at ASCP, and go to some of their workshops, their continuing education events, and talk to people and network and put yourself out there. And if someone invites you to lunch, talk to them and have a conversation like kind of what we're having now, and you'll be surprised at opportunities that open up. But that was my approach and my pathway. So just my suggestion.
Yeah, that sounds great. Um, could you give us a little bit of like what a day of work in your line of work would be like?
Okay, so just to clarify, I work per diem, so I pick up extra shifts occasionally on weekends for Stanford, and I'm also the program director here. So at SJSU, it is a lot of computer time and tons of talking and walking around campus and working on curriculum development and time on the phone and Zoom and emails. And recording new lectures. That's what life's like at SGSU. And I also manage contracts and take care of the budget and manage my staff and have a handful of instructors. And of course, right now I have about 80 students. And yeah, that's what my SGSU job looks like on a regular day. And then for Stanford, come to the lab, clock in, and talk to my coworkers a little bit, get situated, say hello, get my reagents and my controls out, let them come to room temperature, and just get started on lab work, which I'm pretty familiar with and enjoy a lot. It's a lot of muscle memory in my hands and things, so it just feels good to jump in there and start doing what I've always loved. And it's kind of wild to think that, gosh, I've been in the CLS field for 20 years now. So
Wow, 20 years, that's a long time. That's as long as I've been alive. But we had a chat question that says, will SGSU offer MLT to CLS programs or any other programs in the future?
we don't have any plans to offer any other programs, including MLT to CLS. But if the model works into our model, if that change ever does come, LFS, for those that don't know, California Department of Public Health Laboratory Field Services for a long time has been considering an MLT to CLS bridge program. My understanding would be approximately 6 months. And it's hard to incorporate that into the model that we currently have. And like I said, I already have 80 students. So we don't have any plans to offer an MLT program, but we do have a CGMBS program. That's a limited license for those who are interested in something different than CLS. But that's a different talk for a different time.
Um, yeah, that looks like all the questions in the chat right now. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to send them in before we start wrapping things up. Does will SJSU offer pre-CLS courses like medical microbiology online? I think our medical microbiology classes are all in person. We do offer them over the summer, I think, which might be a great option for you if your semester looks a little bit packed.
Okay, yeah, and so we're a graduate program, the SGSU CLS training program. So we don't offer undergrad courses. Those are offered, anything that is a prerequisite is offered by the biology department. Or of course, if it's physics, that would be a different department, but yeah, we only offer graduate courses for our program.
We had a question, what career paths are possible past being a CLS? So I guess like what can build on from CLS? Yeah.
Okay, so I think I answered, but let me know if I'm not understanding the question correctly. It can be specialist, ed coordinator, supervisor, manager, um, administrative lab director, going to LIS.
We had a, will the tuition increase anytime soon, and what is the eligibility for financial aid?
There's a department at SGSU for financial aid, so you want to contact them. And then I imagine it's the financial aid office. You can email us for a specific office if you'd like to know. Charlie and Amber usually handle that. And will the tuition increase anytime soon? So the tuition is going to increase between 3 to 5%, I believe, each year, and that information is provided on our website. And then since financial aid is in all capitals, just touching on that also is that most hospitals offer stipends. So if you're going to, if you make it to the second round of our application process, you're going to want to ask about stipends when you tour. And I can't speak for Stanford Health. They take students with both San Francisco State and San Jose State, and it varies. And then I see another question. May you share some tips to stand out? I think that was covered in my presentation, and there was 5 big categories.
It looks like that's all the questions our club prepared. So if anyone else has any last minute questions, but thank you so much for coming and sharing with us about yourself as well as about the CLS program and some tips for making ourselves more competitive for the program, Michael.
Hey, you're welcome. And thank you for having me. And I hope all of you will consider applying to our program if this is of interest for you and it's right for you. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.